They didn't fire when they landed. They didn't threaten. They didn't even step out of their ships right away. Instead, they waited. 3 obsidian vessels, curved like petals, humming with old energy, rested above our valley like shadows, frozen in time. I stood on the edge of the wheat field Aelys had grown from thread and soil, shotgun slung across my back, breath tight in my throat. Behind me, Aelys just stared. Not at the ships, at the sky. I used to dream of this moment, she whispered. That one day they'd come back, not to take me, but to ask. You think that's what this is? I don't know, she said. But they spoke with my mother's voice. She looked at me, eyes unreadable. And my mother's voice is what I feared and longed for more than anything else. The central ship opened. Out stepped a woman. She wore a robe of dark pearl fiber that shimmered with living patterns. Her face was lined not with age, but with decisions. Eyes bright silver, hands marked by ceremonial threads. I'd never seen anyone who looked so much like Aelys, so different, yet the same. She stepped forward, stopping a few meters from us. Aelys, Caliph of the Prime Thread, she said. I am Virith, once your mother, always your blood. Aelys stood tall. You abandoned me. Virith nodded. Yes. No apology? None worthy of what I did. Silence. Even the wind paused. Then Aelys asked, Why now? Because the old powers are collapsing. The Seraph Council dissolved last cycle. The Warcasters are gone. And the Earth Consortiums are beginning to listen. We're building a new covenant, one led by the threads of memory and intent. We cannot do it without you. I stepped between them. What do you mean, led by her? Virith looked at me. Measured, neither hostile nor warm. She was not merely engineered, human. She was meant to carry the bridge between species, between thought and soul. The failure was ours, because we were afraid of how much she could feel, how much she could change. Aelys' voice cracked. You sold me. Yes, like property. Virith bowed her head. Because we were cowards. I turned to Aelys. You don't owe them anything. I know. But do you want to go? That question broke something open. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. I don't know what I want, she said. Part of me wants to burn their ships and scream. Part of me wants to go with her and understand where I came from. Do you want me with you? She reached for my hand. I want you with me wherever I go. They gave her the choice. No threats, no bribes, just the open door of the ship. And a promise. To let her lead the new Seraph Covenant, alongside other worlds seeking peace after generations of silence and war. It would mean leaving Maraseth. Leaving. The valley, leaving everything we built, but not leaving me. Never that. We sat together under the twin moons that night. The last night. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. I don't want to be worshipped or weaponized again. Then don't let them, I said. Go as you, not as what they tried to make you. And you? I'll be by your side. Like always. She smiled and traced the choosing thread around my wrist. We'll make them remember differently this time. We left Maraseth together. The forest didn't weep. It sang. The ship was unlike anything I'd flown in, alive, responsive, glowing with memory threads that pulsed beneath the hull. As it rose into orbit, I held Aelys' hand, and she didn't let go. They gave her a seat at the round, a voice not to obey orders, but to craft vision. They listened. They learned. She told stories that made warlords weep and turned assassins into architects. And me, I stood beside her, not as her protector, not as her captor, but as her choice. Years passed, worlds changed. Aelys became the center of a new alliance built on remembering, not forgetting pain.
She taught even the most battle-hardened species how to trace their scars into stories that healed. Her past didn't vanish. It became her power. They tried to break her. Instead, she rewrote the future. On the anniversary of the dome, she called
me onto the observation deck. The stars outside had shifted, aligned in ways once thought impossible. Look, she whispered. Do you see it? There, against the black velvet of space, the constellations had formed a new shape. A spiral. Threaded. In silver and violet, I stared awestruck. How? She smiled. They named it after us. After you. Me? The star that stayed, she said, eyes soft. The one who believed. She braced for torture when I bought her. But I never owned her. She belonged only to herself. And somehow she gave that self to me. Not in chains, in love. You'd think once you rescue someone from being chained to an ancient, blood-hungry alien pillar, things would slow down. They didn't. I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of the Guardians returning. They were still stuck on the moon, and we were somewhere between dead space and the gas fields of Rausan Delta, but because of her, Aelys. She lay in the medbay under low-light stasis, her silver-scarred skin slowly regaining warmth. The AI said her cellular makeup wasn't just alien, it was adaptive. Every hour she spent aboard the Mirthless, she changed, slightly, quietly. Her breathing deepened. Her muscles grew denser. The faint hum around her, the one that had rattled, my neural implants before, was now calmer. I sat across from her in the dark, watching her chest rise and fall, a question gnawing at the base of my skull. Who the hell was she? I started with diagnostics. The medbay had pulled trace DNA samples. Nothing matched any known galactic species. Even the advanced polymorphs from the Acheron core didn't shift genes this fast. But Aelys was doing it like it was breathing. My AI had one conclusion. She is rewriting herself. To survive, I muttered. Yes, the AI responded. But possibly also to forget. That part disturbed me more than I expected. When she finally opened her eyes again, I was half asleep in the corner. I jolted awake as her voice filled the room, not aloud, but in my head like before. Your mind is loud when you dream. I rubbed my face. Sorry, most people say I snore. She sat up, her body still weak, but her presence stronger. Her gaze lingered on my hands. You touched the pillar and lived. That's rare. You call that living? I nearly blacked out. You didn't scream, she said softly. That's how most start, with screams. Her voice had no joy in it. No bitterness either, just truth. I stood and brought her a drink from the rehydrator. Here, liquid protein and some Martian minerals. Might help. She took it without hesitation. Her fingers brushed mine. Warm now. Steady. You didn't ask why they left me there, she said. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. She tilted her head. Most would have assumed the worst. I'm not most. She smiled again, this time with her eyes too. It did something to my chest I wasn't ready to admit. Then she said, I was born a weapon. Her people, the Elevir, weren't like humans. They didn't evolve naturally. They were designed. Genetic strings wrapped around ancestral technology, grown in mind furnaces and birthed in biochambers. Aelys had been bred to be perfect, stronger, smarter, deadlier. She was the first of her line to be able to predict intent, with 99% accuracy. That made her dangerous to enemies, and eventually to her own kind. I knew they would betray me, she said, voice cold as vacuum. You saw it coming? Every movement, every shift of tone, every glance they thought hidden. And you didn't stop it? Her jaw tightened. What would you do, Henry, if your entire life was a prediction? If you always knew what others would choose, even if it meant your death? I didn't know what to say. I let it happen, she added, because it was the first time. I didn't want to know what came next. We floated through uncharted sectors for 2 days. I avoided the communication relays. The syndicate would flag me for unauthorized deviation, but I couldn't care less. Aelys needed time. And honestly, so did I. She spent most of her time by the observation panel, watching the stars. Sometimes she'd mutter names under her breath, names of systems, coordinates. I never interrupted, but on the 3rd day she looked at me and said, "They'll come for me." "Your people?" She nodded. "Not to rescue, to erase." I leaned against the wall. "Let them come." Her smile returned, sad and beautiful. "You don't know what they are." "Then tell me." The Elevir High Accord wasn't just a government. It was a hive mind fractured into 7 ruling voices. They controlled memory, emotion, and action through psionic harmonics. When Aelys began deviating, feeling things she wasn't programmed to feel, they classified her as a breach, an error. They didn't kill errors. They exiled them, alive, conscious, tortured.
Chained to the sacrificial pillar until the vines drained their thoughts into the soil of the world that made them. She was the 27th, the only one who lasted. 33 years. I had no idea what to say, so I reached out, slowly, and placed
my hand over hers. "You're not a mistake." She looked up, startled. "You believe that?" "I do now." And I meant it. That night, I dreamed in colors I'd never seen before. I saw Aelys walking through a field of obsidian flowers, each petal burning silently. I saw her smile, real and free. I heard a voice, not hers but mine, saying her name, like it was a promise. When I woke, I was crying, and the ship's alarms were going off. A proximity alert blared through the deck. I ran to the cockpit. 2 vessels, unmarked, low profile, moving like ghosts through dark space. Not pirates. Worse. Elevir retrieval ships. They'd found us. I didn't have weapons powerful enough to take them both on. I started evasive maneuvers. But even before I turned the ship, Aelys was there, eyes glowing faintly. "They won't fire immediately," she said. "They'll try to reason first, convince you to surrender me." "Not happening," she shook her head. "If they breach, it won't just be me they erase. They'll destroy you, mind and soul." "Then we don't let them in." She looked at me, really looked. Then she stepped forward and kissed me, not out of romance, out of memory transfer. I collapsed. When I opened my eyes, I knew things I shouldn't. Her childhood. Her fall. Her last words to the only sister she had before they tore them apart. I felt her pain, her hope, her guilt, her need, and something else. A code. She had hidden it in herself, deep, buried behind psionic shields. A failsafe. Coordinates. "Aelys," I whispered, gasping. "What is this place?" She answered with a voice that shook. "The only sanctuary left. If we reach it, I might survive." Might? I haven't seen it in over 30 years. It might be gone. I stood. Then, we'll find out. Behind us, the retrieval ships hailed us again. "This is your final warning. Release the anomaly. We will not repeat the offer." I turned off the comms, looked at Aelys, strap in, and hit the jump drive. We vanished into a storm of stars, fleeing both death and destiny. And somewhere, on the edge of forgotten space, hope flickered like a dying ember, refusing to go out. Space didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like a narrowing corridor, walls closing in on us with every jump. The farther we got from Elerin, the closer we seemed to come to something else, something older, something Aelys had buried deep. Within her fractured memory, I piloted us through nebula fields with names no one dared speak, regions marked only in dead languages, burned into star maps centuries ago. And still the Elevir followed, never right behind, but never far. "They're tracking my psionic echoes," Aelys said quietly. strapped into the co-pilot seat, her voice tighter than usual. "Can't you shut that down?" I asked. "I've been trying since I was 7. Her skin had changed again. Not drastically. Not like shape-shifting, but subtly. The scars along her arms glowed faintly now, pulsing in rhythm with something I couldn't detect. And her eyes, once violet, shifted, sometimes silver, sometimes a deep cerulean. She wasn't evolving, she was remembering what she was meant to become. "Are you scared?" I asked as I calculated the final coordinates she gave me. She didn't answer at first. Then, not of them, of me. The jump to the sanctuary nearly tore the mirthless apart. The ship screamed. So did my bones. We passed through a rift that wasn't supposed to exist, between twin dead stars that orbited nothing but each other. Then silence. And then light. It wasn't natural light. It was refracted through something unseen, like the afterglow of creation itself. Before us hung a planet, or what remained of one. It was a shattered world, broken into 4 massive floating plates, suspended in a web of gravitational beams. Ancient. Tech, pre-quantum, pre-time, kept the land from collapsing completely. Each landmass drifted slowly, like islands in the void. Aelys leaned forward, her breath caught. "It's still here." "What is it?" She smiled, but the smile held sorrow. "This was our first rebellion. The Elevir who learned to feel escaped here. They built a place where emotion was not error, where they could evolve freely, beyond prediction." And what happened? She pointed to the largest plate, cracked down the middle. They were hunted, judged, executed. "So why are we here?" She turned to me, voice firm. "Because I carry the last echo of their code. And if it still lives beneath the ruins, I can activate it." We landed on the smallest plate, an outpost overgrown with crystal vines and metal roots. No atmosphere, no life, except the humming. Not audible, but felt, just like her voice used to be when she spoke inside my mind. I stepped out in full suits. The surface crunched under our boots. The ruins were twisted remnants of architecture, both brutal and beautiful. Arches that floated mid-air, corridors that spiraled with no end point. And then we saw the tower, half collapsed, covered in psionic burn marks. Aelys froze. This was my mother's. I stopped walking. She was here. She died here. Inside the tower, we found what was left of her. Bones fused with her memory crystal, wrapped in a containment sarcophagus that had long since lost power. Aelys kneeled beside the relic, her hands trembling. She didn't cry. She just touched the edge of the sarcophagus and whispered, "I made it." A hum responded, low, gentle, a voice. My spine stiffened. The air changed. It wasn't her mother speaking. It was the code. It didn't speak with words. It projected. Images. Memories. A torrent of knowledge surged into our minds. Aelys stood like a pillar, unmoved as the flood of her people's forbidden. History roared into her. Her hands clenched, her scars ignited like veins of starlight. I felt it too, though dulled, filtered through my weaker mind. But I saw enough. The Elevir hadn't just bred warriors, they bred vessels, beings who could house the collected thoughts of entire civilizations. Aelys wasn't just a survivor, she was the last library of a forgotten people, and she was unlocking. I reached out to her, but the moment my fingers brushed her shoulder, she collapsed. Not from weakness, from overload. The ground beneath us trembled. Above, in the void, 2 ships broke warp. Elevir. They followed us, I muttered, dragging her back toward the exit. Of course they did. The sanctuary had no weapons, no shields, no defenses, but Aelys had something else now. As I carried her to the ridge, the tower behind us cracked open, revealing an orb of pure psionic light. It floated upward, slow and elegant, and then, boom! A shockwave erupted. I stumbled, shielding her with my body. The Elevir ship staggered. One tilted. The other tried to realign, but something in the atmosphere glitched, like their tech couldn't interpret the ancient signals pouring from the orb. Aelys stirred. Her eyes opened. They were glowing gold. She stood without help. "You need to get back to the ship," she said. "Now. What about you? I need to finish what was started." She turned toward the largest landmass, the one split down the middle. "There's a chamber beneath the fracture. It holds the root code. If I reach it, I can erase the bindings. Not just on me, on all of us." "You'll die." She looked at me with fierce calm. "Then I'll die free." I grabbed her hand. "Not alone." She stared at our fingers, then she nodded. Together, we ran. The fracture loomed like a scar. We descended into it, through a bridge made of hovering hexagons that formed beneath Aelys's steps. Her presence called to the ruins. Doors opened, lights flared. At the end, the chamber, spherical, silent. In the center, a pedestal, glowing softly. She stepped forward. "I need to connect directly." "How?" She turned to me. "I have to let go of every block they implanted, every wall I built. It'll hurt. You can't be near me when it happens." I swallowed hard. "No, Henry, if you're going through pain, I'm going with you." She knelt before the pedestal, placed her hands upon it, and began to scream. Not from pain, from release. Every ounce of containment melted away. Her voice echoed across the plates! The Elevir ships above exploded in static. Their systems short-circuited. One spiraled. The other fled. And Aelys. She began to float. I backed away as her body lit up with the entire spectrum. The air warped. Time twisted. My breath caught. My vision blurred. And then, silence. She collapsed. I ran to her, heart in my throat. She was breathing, but changed. The scars were gone. The glow remained, and when she opened her eyes, she looked whole. We sat beside the pedestal for a long time, not speaking. Then she said, "They'll never find me again." "You broke the code?" "I became it." She turned to me. "And you? You broke fate. Some chains don't rattle. They don't bind your hands or blister your skin. Some chains are quieter, made of memory, of guilt, of things you never said and things you can't forget. Aelys had broken hers, at least the ones forged by the Elevir. But I was beginning to realize she carried others that no code or light could erase. And so did I. We spent 3 days in orbit above the sanctuary's remains. The floating landmasses began to shift, recalibrating in patterns Aelys said hadn't moved in 30 generations. She could feel them now, like a heartbeat in her bones. The roots of the rebel code had accepted her as their heir. The Elevir didn't return. Not yet, but the silence didn't comfort her. "They're recalibrating," she said. "They never stop adapting. They'll come back with new tactics, new leaders." "You beat them." "I bought us time." I watched her pace the bridge barefoot, robes of woven synth fabric clinging to her form like starlight. She wasn't the same woman I'd carried from the pillar. Not physically, not mentally, and I wasn't the same man who'd gone looking for a salvage coil. On the 4th morning, I woke up to find her gone. Not far, just sitting in the cargo bay, staring at a strip of burnt alloy. Her fingers traced the jagged edge again and again, almost ritualistically. I sat beside her without a word. After a long pause, she said, "This was part of my first mission. The first time I was ordered to erase a mind." I glanced at the metal. It looked insignificant, dead, but in her hands it might as well have been radioactive. "I didn't do it," she continued. "I couldn't. That was when they knew I was broken." "You weren't broken," I said. She turned to me slowly. "But I was disobedient. And in Elevir society, that's the same thing." I reached out, carefully taking the shard from her hand and setting it aside. "You didn't erase that mind. So they tried to erase yours." That night, she told me about the child. A boy. Human. Somewhere on the edge of Elevir-controlled space, there had been a small colony suspected of housing rebel signals. Aelys had been sent in, cloaked and alone, to scan for anomalies and disable them. She found nothing, except the boy. He had looked at her like I had, without fear. Just curiosity. She remembered his name, Tyven. He'd offered her food. She couldn't bring herself to report the colony. She'd sabotaged the scan logs, fabricated data, and 2 weeks later, the planet vanished from maps. No one speaks of Tyven. Now, she said, her voice like ash. But I carry him in every breath. I took her hand. Not because I had anything to say, but because silence was sometimes the only thing strong enough to hold someone together. We left the sanctuary on the 5th day. It wasn't easy. Aelys felt tethered to the place, but she knew. It wasn't safety. It was temptation. A siren song to disappear, to become myth again. But she didn't want to vanish. Not anymore. We plotted a course toward neutral space. A trading ring called Velis Hold, built into the ribs of an ancient space leviathan, floating in permanent twilight between two gravity wells. It was dangerous, but it was also the only place that sold what we needed next. Information. Velis Hold was chaos. Twisting corridors, stale air, lights that flickered like forgotten stars. Every species in the quadrant passed through. Merchants, mercenaries, scientists, fugitives, and spies. Aelys wore a cloak now, not to hide who she was, but to mute her presence. The less attention we drew, the better. We found a broker named Score in the lower rings. Amphibian, 4 arms, a memory implant shaped like a beetle on his temple. He looked at me, then at her, and froze. That's impossible, he said. What is? I asked. He pointed a trembling finger at Aelys. Your face. It's in the Forbidden Echoes. Aelys stepped forward, voice calm. Show me. Score retrieved a data crystal, etched with personal resonance. When he played it, the air shimmered, and a hologram appeared. It was Aelys, chained, screaming. The pillar rose behind her, and Elevir voices boomed in unison. Let the defect be erased by time, bound to the forgotten. Stone, her name scoured from all memory. Score's skin turned pale. They never erased it. They archived it. As a warning. To who? I asked. To other hybrids, he croaked. To those who might feel. Aelys watched the hologram until it ended. Then she said, Download. It. Why? I asked. Because the galaxy needs to see it. I raised an eyebrow. You want to go public? If I remain a ghost, others like me will stay in chains. But if I stand in the light, if I speak, then the chains crack. And if they kill you for it? She looked at me. Then someone else will finish the message. Back on the Mirthless, we transmitted the data burst, encoded, fragmented, sent, across hundreds of relays, some old enough to have once broadcast Earth's first steps into space. The kind of message that can't be erased once it spreads. We didn't wait for a reply. We didn't need one. The chain was broken, the echo was free, and somewhere out there I hoped Tyven's name lit up the dark. We didn't expect the message to go viral. Not across media channels, not through whispers in cantinas, not in encrypted whispers passed from rebel camps to slum world data grids, but within 48 hours of Aelys's face appearing across 1,000 relay points, everything changed. We weren't just fugitives anymore. We were sparks in a powder keg, and someone had lit the match. The first attack came quietly. No warning, no sensors, not even a proximity ping. Just sudden cold. A stillness that stole the breath from your lungs. It happened while we were docked for repairs on a rogue satellite near the Stygian Drift. An unmarked courier ship latched on, pretending to be a refueling rig. Then the shadows came through the hull. They weren't Elevir soldiers, they were worse. Reclaimers, built in the image of the Elevir's high priests, but hollow. Half meat, half code. Functioning as remote executioners. Their bodies flickered like holograms struggling against gravity, but when they hit you, it hurt like steel and ice. The first one moved straight for Aelys, bypassing me completely. It whispered, "Return," she answered with light. I didn't know she had learned to fight like that. The air shimmered around her, every movement an echo of what she was and what she had become. She didn't use weapons, she was the weapon. But they kept coming. The Reclaimers weren't designed to win fights. They were designed to exhaust you, and they nearly succeeded. I fired shot after shot, EMP rounds, pulse disruptors, incendiary bursts. Nothing kept them down for long. They reformed pixel by pixel and came again. It was Aelys who ended it. She placed both palms on the floor. Her scars flared to life, still there, but now glowing like constellations across her body. She whispered a word I didn't understand. The Reclaimers froze mid-step, then shattered into smoke. When it ended, we were both drenched in sweat, chest heaving. "That was new," I said. She didn't answer right away, just looked at the charred floor. "They're not going to stop. Now that the message is out, the High Accord will deploy everything they have." "How much is everything?" Her silence was answer enough. That night, we didn't sleep. We just sat in the observation deck, watching a gas giant roll past a shattered moon. I broke the quiet. "You never told me what the message said, the part only the Elevere could read." She looked at me, eyes heavy. "It wasn't just about me, it was a pattern, the root code sequence for autonomy." I blinked. "You gave them the key to break." "Free?" She nodded. "If even one hybrid sees it and realizes they're more than a puppet, the Accord's control fractures." I couldn't help but smile. "That's not a spark, Aelys. That's a supernova." She turned to me slowly. "I've never had a home, or a people, or even a choice. But if I can give that to someone else, then it was worth the chain." 2 days later, we received a reply. Not a voice, not a transmission, but a ripple in the psionic field. She felt it first, sitting up in her sleep, heart racing. "They're waking up," she said. "Others, I can feel them." I reached for her hand, but then her body seized. Her eyes rolled back, her back arched, her mouth opened in a silent scream. I panicked, ran for the med bay, triggered emergency stasis, tried every override in the manual. She was burning from the inside. The light from her scars now poured from her skin like steam. And then, one word echoed through the ship's AI. I grabbed her and ran. Didn't think, didn't look back. Outside the ship, the stars twisted. 3 Elevere warships dropped from hyperspace in a formation that said this wasn't a capture. This was extermination. I made a choice, the only one that made sense. I rerouted all of the Mirthless's remaining power into the life pod, strapped Aelys in, and slammed my hand on the release. She screamed, "No!" just as the doors sealed shut. She pounded against the glass. But the pod was gone, launched toward the gravitational blind spot near Jekar's shadow, the only place the Elevere scanners couldn't see. Then I turned, faced the warships, and charged. Straight at them. They didn't expect that. Didn't expect a one-man wreck to spin toward their formation like a suicide missile. I targeted the lead vessel's psionic relay core, fired everything. The screen went white. Woke up 3 days later, on a bed of moss. Not in my ship, not in space, but beneath a cracked dome under a twilight sky. Aelys sat beside me, alive, whole. "I told you I'd die with you," I whispered. She smiled. "You didn't die," she said softly. "You changed. I shouldn't have survived that blast. By every law of physics, every piece of starship design, I should have been scattered into atoms across the void. But I wasn't. Instead, I woke up in a dome made from broken technology and breathing stone. Roots crawled through the ceiling like they remembered sky. The air carried the scent of wet circuits and old memories. Aelys sat beside me, quiet, waiting. "You're not a man anymore," she said softly. "At least, not just." I blinked. My body ached, but not in the usual ways. It wasn't bruises or burns. It was difference, like something inside me had been rewritten. "What did you do to me?" "You did it to yourself," she replied. "When you overloaded the core, you touched the Accord's primary thread. You weren't just destroying a ship, you crossed into the field their entire neural net runs on. And you altered it." She walked me outside, barefoot across moss-covered alloy. The dome opened into a valley filled with floating obelisks and glowing water veins. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of figures moved through the mist, quiet and free. "They're like me," Aelys said. "Hybrids, former hybrids, refugees from the Accord. They've felt the pulse, they're waking up. And you brought me here because," she turned to face me, "because you're the first human the code responded to. You shouldn't have been able to trigger anything. But you did. You interfered with the Elevir signal. You changed it. That's not supposed to be possible." "And? What does that mean?" She hesitated then. "It means you're not just my rescuer anymore. You're part of the rewrite." The others were hesitant around me. They whispered in languages my ears didn't know but my instincts recognized. Their eyes tracked me, not with suspicion, but with awe. As if I were sacred. It made my skin crawl. I wasn't a hero. I was a salvage pilot who got lucky and stupid on the same day. But they didn't care. To them, I was the anomaly that proved the Accord wasn't infallible. Aelys took me to the center of the valley, to a tower that rose into clouds of slow-falling particles. Inside, old tech throbbed like heartbeats. The walls were inscribed with names, most unreadable. "This is where we decide what happens next," she said. I frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed to a console, built from crystal and memory metal. "You can re-enter the Accord's lattice. Directly. Inject a fail sequence into the primary code base. And that'll do what? Force every hybrid to feel the truth. The full truth. Not the filtered obedience programming. And if I fail? They'll know," she said. "They'll descend. Not to erase us this time, but to end the sanctuary forever." I stared at the console. My fingers hovered above the surface. I wasn't trained for this. I wasn't a programmer or a prophet. I was a man who fell in love with someone chained to the edge of annihilation, and maybe that was enough. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and pressed my palm to the crystal. It wasn't code. Not in the way we understood it. It was emotion, memory, light bound to thought. The moment my skin touched the interface, I felt myself pulled through a tunnel of screams and songs and whispers and wounds. I saw children born and thrown into training pods. I saw mothers erased from memory banks. I saw Aelys, over and over again, locked away in thousands of simulations. And then I saw myself, standing at the pillar, not saving her, but breaking with her, refusing fate. I spoke into the field, not with my voice, but my intent, and what I said was simple: no more chains. When I opened my eyes, the tower was gone. In its place stood a ring of light, pulsing once, then vanishing. Aelys knelt beside me, breathing hard. "You did it," she whispered. "Are we free?" She smiled. "No, but now we can be." All across the galaxy, cracks appeared in the Accord. Hybrids began disconnecting. Some disappeared. Some rebelled. Some simply woke up. The High Accord scrambled, tried to re-establish control, but they were chasing shadows now. The code had changed, and change spreads. The sanctuary wasn't a hiding place anymore. It became a beacon, a place of learning, rebuilding, remembering. Aelys and I stayed. For now, she taught. I helped rebuild damaged systems, old tech, and new lives. Every day she walked freer. Every night she slept with her head beside mine. No chains in sight, no shadows waiting. And one morning, she looked at me and said, "You saved me." I shook my head. "No, Aelys. You freed me. It's strange how quiet the stars can be after a war of souls. No alarms, no gunships, no warnings etched in static. Just silence. Wide. Infinite. Healing. Aelys stands at the edge of the cliff every morning now. The wind here smells like ozone and memory. Her eyes follow the horizon, not to track threats anymore, but to greet a future she once believed would never belong to her. The scars that used to glow like warnings now pulse with warmth. Not pain, not trauma, just life. The sanctuary has changed. No longer secret, no longer hiding. The hybrids have started calling it Eliar, a word pulled from the roots of a language the Accord tried to erase. It means the place we choose. Not the place they were sent, not the place they were bound, but a place born of will. Every day, new arrivals land. Some damaged, some terrified, some unsure whether freedom is real. But they come. Because they felt the code change. Because they saw Aelys's face. Because they heard the name Henry whispered in the dark. Not as a warrior, not as a prophet, but as a man who chose to stay when it mattered. I work in the quiet parts of the valley. No title. No command, just tools and hands and sweat. I help build bridges, rewire tech, clean out what's left of Elevere implants and the newer arrivals. Some cry, some scream, some just thank me with a look. I take it all because I know what they've survived, and because Aelys did the same for me when she broke her own chains. One night, as we lay under a dome of soft glowing stars, she asked, "Do you ever miss Earth?" I thought for a while before answering. I miss not knowing how broken things were, but I don't miss pretending they were fine. She turned her head on the pillow of moss and tech ribbon. "You'd go back, wouldn't you? Only if you came with me." She smiled softly, eyes reflecting starlight. "I don't belong to anyone now, but I'll walk beside you as far as the galaxies stretch." That was her way of saying yes. Trouble didn't disappear. The Accord didn't collapse in a single day. Pockets still remain. Systems still hunt. Some hybrids were too deep in the lattice to break free. Some didn't want to. We mourned them, but we didn't stop. We formed the Reclaimers' Covenant, a name taken back from those hollow puppets who had tried to erase Aelys from existence. Now we reclaim. We travel. We teach. We protect. Not just hybrids, but anyone caught in someone else's war. We speak in open broadcasts now, our signals bouncing between asteroids and derelict comets, spreading one truth: you are not a mistake. The first time Aelys spoke, in front of a galactic council, the chamber trembled, not from her voice, but from the weight of truth. She didn't accuse. She didn't beg. She just told them what had been done. To her, to the others, and to what was lost when obedience was worshipped more than compassion. Some officials wept. Some walked out. But none forgot. Years passed. We returned to Ilaran once, where I found her. Chains still fused to that cracked pillar. Vines had grown over them. The scars on the stone still whispered. She didn't touch them. She just stood quietly. Then turned away. "They're part of me," she said. "But they're not my future." We left without looking back. One day she brought a child to me. Not ours. At least not yet. A boy born in a refugee ship. Parents lost. Mind damaged by too many neural burns from Accord tech. She cradled him in her arms, and I saw the ghost of her own story in her smile. "He can't speak yet," she said. "But he feels." I knelt beside her, brushing the boy's hair from his eyes. "Then he's already more free than we ever were." She nodded, and in that moment we both knew. Our story wasn't just about survival. It was about seeding something new. Now I dream differently. Not of chains or screams or pillars, but of open skies, laughter through fields of metal flowers, and Aelys holding a light in her hands that no one could take from her. She still doesn't say "I love you" the way humans do. But sometimes when the wind carries our names in languages that died 1,000 years ago, she looks at me and says, "Because you broke my chains, I remembered how to feel." And I always reply, Because you let me in, I remembered who I am. This is the end of that story, but not the end of us. Because fate didn't write us, we wrote each other. And now we walk forward unbound, together, beyond chains, beyond stars.